Welcome to Raw and Refined, the Gentleman's Hour, where we're going to have conversation with middle-aged black men about what's going on. We welcome you to listen, comment, and like, and hopefully encourage others to join for future conversations as well. We always like to start off with a toast, and with that toast, it's because we are gentlemen and we do it raw and refined.
Welcome back to Raw and Refine. This is Rich, and I'm here with John today. It's just the two of us today. And today we're going to be talking about something we both had to learn, and that's slowing down. As always, we like to start off with a beverage. Today I'm still in the midst of the work day, technically, so I'm sipping on my standard homemade Gatorade we've talked about before. My standard electrolyte beverage, some water, a little lemon juice, a dash of salt, and a little stevia. And so that's what I'm doing.
In the Yeti, I suppose, as well, right?
You know it,
There you
brother.
go. There you go.
In the
That's right.
Yeti.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I love it. That's outstanding, brother. Outstanding. Now, today at this time, like you said, just kind of still in the midst of the day, I am just really drinking on some nice, refreshing ice water, my friend. So that's what I got going on today, keeping me refreshed, keeping everything moving.
Excellent. Excellent. So we're calling this episode The Art of Downtime because real rest isn't just about sleep. It's about recovery, it's about peace, it's about balance, it's about feeding the whole of you and not just okay, I got to get a little physical rest. Yes, that is an important part of it, but downtime is more than just that. So we're going to talk about what it looks like for us, why it's so hard to take, and what it means for our health and happiness. Just like so many things in life are, it's a struggle for us sometimes to figure out how to or when to take downtime, but we're going to dive into just how important it really is. You ready, John?
Sounds good, Rich. I think this is highly important and on time, especially as we're getting ready for holiday seasons coming up, active times of the year, spending with work, family, and friends, and just still trying to find that time for us, and I say us meaning you as well. And it's a great time for us to have this conversation.
That's so true, man. You think because people are taking time off around this time of year, but so many people will blast through the holidays and now they're back to work full time and they're just beat down because they never had a moment during the holidays. They were ripping and running and seeing these people are doing this and doing that. And I gained 6 pounds because I was eating
Hmm.
everything in my face at everybody's
Hmm.
house, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's jump on
Exactly.
in.
Exactly.
Hmm.
How many times do we say you need a vacation from the vacation, right?
Man, try to avoid that, man, but that happens so many times. It's like, you, well, what did you do? I went here and I went there and I went there and I went there and I did
Right.
this and I saw that and it was great, but now I'm tired.
Right.
and
Right, right,
I
right.
got to go to work tomorrow because I ain't got
Right.
no more. I ain't got no more vacation time.
Right.
That has happened.
So
Yeah.
right. So
I try
right.
to manage that a lot better. And I kind of start off going way back. Let's go back,
Hmm.
back, back. But that's often the case, right? We think about, how we're doing things as an adult, and it always have to take that look backward to how we were raised, how we were brought up, how we were, our foundations were put in place. And so we'll kind of think about our attitudes towards rest, work first,
Hmm.
rest later kind of mentality. We've talked about, and we did a whole episode on John Henryism, and we've talked
Hmm.
in other contexts about our proclivity for making sure that we get it done. We've got this, at least for our generation, that we found, thankfully, that from the young brothers, the sons and nephew, that they don't necessarily put that same pressure on themselves
Hmm.
that we had of we have to be 3 times better or 15 times better. Although I think the pedo in chief is doing everything he can to make us have to rethink that or to make this next generation have to pay a little more attention to that. But this
Hmm.
notion of, how we've got to work hard, we've got to keep working, we got to keep going, we got to keep driving forward. And we can worry about, how many times have you heard that saying, you can rest when you're dead, right?
Right.
You know,
Exactly. Just thinking
I'm
that
not
the
trying,
same thing. Right.
that, and that's crazy, but I mean, yeah, it's a truism, is what it is. You will
Hmm.
rest when you're dead, but there's other forms of rest that we need to actively incorporate before you're dead, in an effort
Exactly.
to maybe stave off the dead a little bit.
Exactly. Exactly.
You
Things we
know,
can
well,
do to try to not be dead too earlier than necessary. Right.
right. Our last episode, we were talking about hypertension, talking about how stress plays a role in that, and I think this episode presents that incredible opportunity to delve into one of the best ways to try and deal with, manage, and avoid some of that stress. We were talking about in that last episode, the realities of high blood pressure and stress and all of that kind of stuff. So, downtime, we're going to use that. We're going to say that's kind of an anecdote, or that's one of the things to have in the toolbox to help with that overall wellness, specifically with that stress related hypertension piece. But we were talking a little bit about this kind of cultural proclivity we have for pushing ourselves so much. What's your take on that, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us and our generation, you said it earlier. I think it's just that's how we were brought up and kind of raised that, if you're just sitting around and you're being lazy, but in essence, I think now that it's a matter of you just need time. You need mental
Mm-hmm.
rest, physical rest, spiritual rest, but you need a moment where your body is just not, or your mind is just not on. And I think that's where it was
Right.
so difficult because we always thought of being busy as being productive, but that productivity or busyness wore you down so much that then you weren't as effective in your relationships, in your job, in your education. Remember going to school and trying to do these all night cram sessions. Well, yeah, we may have gotten through, but it took a toll on us later on. And those are the things that I think we've learned that, we try to let our folks and our kids and people understand that, yes, there's time to be busy, time to be productive, but for you to continue to be efficient, you need to also make sure you take good quality time for rest and relaxation.
Yeah, you made me think back to college when you were talking about the cramming. And I remember as a freshman in college being an engineering student and finals week being up for something like 3 days straight, studying and cramming for finals and taking no dose and
Hmm.
drinking Jolt Cola. That's the one that says something like twice the caffeine and all the
Hmm.
sugar you'll ever need on the label, something
Hmm.
to that effect. Staying up and I ended up sleeping for something crazy like 18 hours after it was all over because my body was crashed out. But just how irresponsible that is health
Hmm.
wise,
Hmm. Right. Right.
to do something like that. And on the flip side, having counseled people over the years when they're, preparing for the bar exam or something like that,
Hmm.
I would always tell people they need to stop studying a few days before. I was like,
Hmm.
quit, don't cram all the way up to the end because you're gonna learn everything you're gonna learn. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it's gonna be in there, And what's more important is to get you a really great night of sleep. You
Hmm.
know, the advice I would always tell people is wherever the test is going to be, you need to get you a hotel the night before that's as close that's walking distance to the test. I'm in Chicagoland, so I'm always referencing downtown Chicago.
Hmm.
That's where we would take the bar exam at. So it's like, okay, get you a hotel close by, so and stay there the night before, as opposed to trying to commute down there and creating these stressors. And
I
stay
agree.
down there the night before, get a great night's sleep, and don't study,
Yep.
like the day or two before, and then just go in there well rested and do the thing. But this kind of what you were talking about, I thought also was just this notion that if we go back and we look at from a cultural perspective some of the things that have been handed down, passed down, beat into us in terms of how we're supposed to behave was really a result of slavery, and Jim Crow and white people kind of impressing upon us this notion that we can't be sitting around. Look at that lazy nigger over there.
Right.
Kind of. And so, I
Right.
think we internalize that to a certain extent. We got to make sure that we're not one of them.
Right. Right.
So I think there's a space to kind of push back or overreact, over respond in the other, to our own detriment as well. Whether there's still that external pressure or if it's now just an internal pressure that we create, it's a pressure nonetheless culturally that we've, kind of always got to be on or something like that.
Right. And there's actual science to back that up too, Rich. I mean, there's studies that
Mm-hmm.
do show, especially when it comes to getting your rest before exams or tests of that nature, that getting your 7 to 8 hours of good rest prior to an exam has shown better outcomes, and scores and stuff too. So
Mm-hmm.
I know we think, some people may have thought in the past or think now that, ooh, now I got to keep it going, got to keep that mind fresh, for this exam. But that's actually putting more stress on you during that exam,
Mm-hmm.
and you
You're making
start
that mind
questioning
tired.
yourself, right, on
Mm-hmm.
what that response is, type deal. So there's science to
Yeah,
back it
that.
up, my brother.
I mean, it's the brain is a computer. Think about how often do you have to, over time, if I just let my computer run for days and days without restarting it, without letting it sleep, it's still working, but
Hmm.
the working memory is exhausted.
Hmm.
If it's not had a chance to dump all of the old stuff, it's the resources become limited. It's the
Right.
best way to describe it, and that's the same thing that happens to our mind. Brain fog is real. We see that as a result of all kinds of physical conditions, all
Hmm.
kinds of infections, all kinds of things can create brain fog. It's very
Hmm.
real. We've got limits to our cognitive ability when we're fresh versus
Hmm.
when we're tired or whatever. So let's talk about this cost, the damage or the damages. The former lawyer
Hmm.
in me thinks about costs in terms of damages, but let's talk about the cost of neglecting ourselves when we don't slow down. I know I've burned myself out before to a certain extent working, but mine, the time I go back to most often, it was a combination of physical and mental because the physical was when at the time, I didn't really understand that I had sciatica and how it was impacting my body. But I was still young and I was playing in the basketball league. And I was still trying to do that while I was practicing law and not paying attention to how this condition was getting worse in the short term because I didn't know what was
Hmm.
going on, right? I'm just thinking of something simple. I got a little sore back, not
Hmm.
realizing that it's a nerve thing that's happening because a little crooked.
Hmm.
We're all a little asymmetric, and now I
Hmm.
understand how. And I got custom orthotics now, brother. But so it was a combination of the physical and emotional burnout
Yeah.
because I didn't understand the health piece at the time. And so, part of that, this notion of keep going, this
Right.
keep going. I'm literally out there because I'm still at an age where I think I'm immortal. I'm
Hmm.
literally out there playing in this basketball league, and I'm like out there on one and a half legs,
Mm.
basically.
Hmm.
You know,
Right. Yep.
not
Yep.
wanting to accept the reality
Yep.
that I need to go sit my ass down somewhere.
Right. 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 That's true, brother. That's true. And then again,
and
we're not saying that, we got to rest the rest of our life away, as well, either,
no,
type deal.
right.
But you gotta
Uh-huh.
have moments to let that body recuperate, let it heal, let that
hmm
mind heal and relax and get back to it, man. I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's
you know, as
excellent
they say, you got
example.
to listen to your body. But
Yeah.
before you can even listen to your body, is you have to first you got to understand how the language your body speaks. You have to initiate the conversation before you can
Right.
listen to your body. You got to first even understand what that means, how that works. What the signs are that your body's giving you, telling you. So if you're just living
Right.
life and not really tuned into who you are, what this vehicle is that you're moving around in. You're
Right.
just moving, but you're not really conscious on that level, you're not paying attention to the signs. Because
Right.
again, as we talked about before, a lot of our life is really easy to be that frog in the boiling and the frog in the pot. The water keeps
Hmm.
getting creeped up. You won't notice the things that are
Hmm.
changing. You won't notice these minute, slow
Right.
creeps over
Right.
time until something goes. In my case, it was literally one morning I tried to get out the bed and I fell to the floor. I couldn't stand up, couldn't support myself. My back and my that whole sciatica thing
Yep.
said, "Nope, we're shutting you down. You
Yep.
ain't been listening. Been telling
Yep.
your ass for the last 3, 4 weeks that you got some stuff going on here."
Right. Right.
And
Don't
and
listen. That's right.
yeah, don't and so I should have been listening for a long time earlier than that and hadn't been. But I don't think I even understood at that point what I should have been listening for. Or,
Right.
but
Right.
part of that in my case too, again, like I said, still those feelings of immortality.
Yep.
I accept my mortality at this age. Now I'm trying to extend and prolong and keep it as good as possible. Back then, I thought I could, leap tall buildings in a single
Right.
bound. Dun, 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 dun,
That's true. That's true,
yeah, until
bruh.
you run into the side of a building and say, "Oh, dang, I really can't jump that far." Okay,
Right. That's
hurts.
true.
Hmm.
Nah, and those are signs, man. I mean, backaches, headaches, belly pains, irritability, not feeling rested after resting. These are all signs
That's
that
a crazy one, man.
your
That's a
body
crazy
is
one.
telling
When
you,
people
right?
talk about that, say I was in bed for 8 hours and I woke up and I just feel tired. You
Right.
know, you
Right.
need to be hollering at somebody.
Right.
uh,
Exactly. Need to get that
you know,
checked on it.
right. Start with that person that you're laying next to, if there is somebody next to
Right.
you, because they'll be able to tell you, "No, you was snoring loud as hell."
Right.
Hmm?
Right.
You remember those 5 times when I kept telling you to roll over? That's why you sleep.
Exactly.
That's why you still tired.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
or whatever.
Exactly.
But,
Nah, and I think for me, Rich, I think I really noticed it the time when I was diagnosed with diabetes and high blood pressure. They both
hmm
kind of hit at the same time, and it was at a time that I was really pushing it, man. I was trying to be the end all, as it relates to health and healthcare and medicine and all of that. And then all of a sudden I get the diagnosis of diabetes and high blood pressure. Yes, there's family history and all of that as well, but I still feel like I probably could have delayed the onset of that developing if I paid more
hmm
attention to balancing the needs
Yeah.
of my body, man. And yes, we get it. You be active, be productive, be engaged with things that are going on around you and your family, but you also have to make sure you're taking that time for you in order to have that balance that's needed. And like you said, our body will tell us. It'll knock us down. If it said, "All right, I gave you these warning signs and you still weren't listening, I'm gonna knock you
hmm
out with this one, and now you're gonna hear me." And
hmm
unfortunately, that may not be a good thing for us when that happens as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. I told you to sit down. Now you're gonna have to lay down
Right,
because you
right,
didn't want to sit down.
right.
It's as simple as that on some levels. Really, it's
Hmm.
making this has to be part of the package. This has
Right,
to be part of the plan. This
right,
has to be, on the agenda on a regular, consistent basis.
right,
This is part of the maintenance that's
right,
required. This is what it really has to be. And so, when you're thinking about how do I balance work and how do I balance all the other parts of my life, is well, you you prioritize it. And I think that's something that quite often is not the case when people talk about downtime. I think
bro.
it's really interesting. You mentioned irritability as one. And I think, we see that a lot. And I think part of that is just, again, we talked about culture, but I think often we're talking about Black culture.
Mm.
American culture is really a culture of, and we're seeing it even more so today, right now, right? Everything is pointing to the goal is to try and make Americans work harder and longer,
Hmm.
right? We're seeing
Hmm.
things stripped away. We're seeing all kinds of changes that are happening, and they're all designed for the average working person to have to work longer and harder. And, retirement is getting pushed out further away. And if that actually ever happens for a lot of people,
Right.
and so if you're not going to have the opportunity to spend 20 years fishing and have the time to catch up on
Mm.
that downtime, you got to make it a reality. If your life is going to be one that you don't ever really get to take off years, right? You're not
Right.
going to retire. You're going to always be working some capacity. Like we see a lot of Americans, seniors that don't ever get to shut it down all the way because they can't afford to. So if you don't ever get to shut it all the way down and retire, if you're always going to be working, you're always going to have some of those same pressures, then that has to be part of the whole package, you
Right.
know.
Right. Now, and there are some
Hmm.
companies out there that have, come to understand that and recognize that. I think some of our tech-based companies have understood that rest is important, that it's not always a go, 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 that
Hmm.
you have to take time for you because they see that the efficiency improves the more you are able to balance that output. And then, what do, Rich? We schedule busy time, right?
Hmm.
We don't schedule rest time unless we're putting in the vacation. But then you referenced it earlier. But then you planning out the whole vacation. You're like, oh, I got to make
Hmm.
sure I hit this place. I got to make sure I go do this. I got to make sure I get there, type deal. And we're gonna do that during
Hmm.
this time frame and this and the other. But where's the rest? I mean, isn't that
That's the
what
beauty of going
vacation is
back to
supposed to
places
be?
you've been before. I'm sorry to jump in
Yeah,
on you, John, but that's the beauty of going back to places you've been before. Because then you're not trying to go see everything. You're not sightseeing. You just like this place because you keep coming back here because you like the service or you like the food, you like the room, the view or whatever. And then
yeah,
it's easier to build in that downtime because I don't
yeah.
need to go see nothing. I already been everywhere here that I want to see, and I'm coming back here because I like these things specifically
Right.
or whatever. And it's a little easier, I think, to kind of build in that instead of having that planned out trip that so many people do.
I think that's a great suggestion there, Rich, and you're absolutely right. And I guess we do that too. We like to go to Aruba, so we go back from time because we know it. We know the places, but it's a place where we feel we can really relax. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying, and still
Yeah,
enjoy what it all has to offer. But we've already seen, a lot of those places. But just sometimes getting away helps in that rest and relaxation versus
yeah, and
being
you
at
still go hit
home.
that restaurant that you
Oh
like.
yeah,
You won't necessarily stay at the resort all the time. You go,
exactly.
you might go to that one spot that you've shopped at before, or you'll go to that restaurant you've been to before. But that's still part of
Exactly.
the downtime because now you're not, yes, you're a visitor, but you're not a spectator.
Right.
You're not that person walking around, ooh, ah, ooh. You're
Right.
not. You're still able to keep more of your brain shut down.
Right.
Because you're just going somewhere to have something to eat that you've been before,
Right.
or that kind of thing.
And I think that when it comes to like these staycations, where we're staying basically at home and just taking the time off, I
Hmm.
think in my opinion, I would keep those at a lesser amount of days versus,
Hmm.
a long an extension being at home because when you're at home, you're still in the environment that causes you to be busy. So,
Right,
there's
right.
always
You end
things
up
that
you
could
end up
come up.
fixing stuff. You end up
Right.
you
And
end up
thinking about,
with
"Ooh,
a
I can
new
take
with
care of
a
this."
honey-do list and that and
Right,
that.
right, right, type
So
deal.
you replaced work tasks for home tasks.
Yep, yep, yep.
That's a good point because I have done that in the past, taken a quote unquote staycation,
Mhm,
and still was very active. Just
mhm.
the goal is to, for me, downtime is just that. It's my body is down and my mind is down, or my mind
Mhm.
is occupied by something that's completely and entirely different from the norm. And
Yeah.
so I'm not doing the normal work thinking, life thinking. If I'm doing
Mhm.
something with my mind, it's something that's pure enjoyment, either because it's fun or because it's kind of challenging and new. But.
Right. And then for me, I can do that better away than I
Hmm.
can at home because I'm still
Yeah.
thinking, well, I'm here. I can get this done. Maybe now I have extra time to get it
Hmm.
done, but it's still getting it done. Whereas when I'm
Hmm.
away, no, I mean, if I'm not there, I try to get it out of my mind to have to work on it and get it done as well. So,
Yeah. I think if you're gonna do a staycation, I think you can still do effective downtime, but I think it requires a higher level of intention
you
because of
have
the
to be
reality
intentional.
of this. The reality of these, like you're saying, this is, that's kind of natural, right? Because that's your everyday environment, that's your home.
Right,
You're always thinking in general about things that you need to do, and now you got a chunk of
right,
time. And then this goes back again to this notion of, am I being lazy because I'm just sitting around? And it's
right.
easier away from home to not feel like you're being lazy when you're laying
Exactly,
around. That's why I came here.
exactly,
That's why I paid all this
exactly.
money so that I could lay around, so I could get a massage, and so I could do this or do that. But
Yes,
if you can achieve it with intention, you can achieve it, and that intention really has to be about filling that time with downtime.
right,
So again, it might require some scheduling.
right,
But what you're doing is you're scheduling the downtime.
right.
A lot of times when I have days at work when I don't have a lot of meetings,
Hmm.
I will schedule blocks of time on my
Hmm.
calendar. One, so nobody else can jump in there, but
Hmm.
two, so that I'm kind of shaping what my day is going to be. And I'll say, well, I'm going to work on this from this time to this time, and then from this time. But one thing that I have on my calendar every day is lunch.
Yep.
Every day it's automatically on there. It's a recurring meeting time. So if you
Hmm.
want to meet during lunchtime, that's cool. We can meet, but I'm having lunch.
Yep.
So I hope
Yep.
you bring in yours.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Scheduling time, you can do that when you're going to be home. I'm gonna read a book for the next 3 hours, or I'm gonna do
Right.
this, something that's enjoyable. I'm gonna listen to some music. I'm gonna catch up on this or that,
Right.
this series that I was gonna watch, that I wanted to watch. But so you can fill that time with
Right.
these stressors, with these things that are going to still give you an opportunity to relax your mind
Right.
and your body.
And that's it, Rich. I mean, that's being intentional, and that's, what we call reclaiming our peace.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to put that downtime routine into it. And it can look different for everybody. It's a matter of where you feel that your mind can relax, your body
Mm-hmm.
can relax, and you feel less of the stress that's going on around you. I think for you, you've mentioned some things that you enjoy doing during those times. What are some of those that you talked about, bro?
Well, I like to walk. I like
Hmm.
to get out in nature and walk and just be one with nature and what's going
Hmm.
on around me, and try and I'm usually walking with my headphones on. I'm listening. I have a specific playlist that I listen
Hmm.
to, and it's something I try to do as much as possible. I like to cook.
Hmm.
Cooking for me, it's both about the nourishment and controlling as much as I can of what I'm eating. But it's also for me the enjoyment, and it's another one of those things. You can kind of shut down parts of your brain while you're
Hmm.
doing it. Because anything else, you got muscle memory, so right, I can chop and do all that kind of stuff,
Right.
and that doesn't require me to pay a high level of attention. And even if I'm working with a newer recipe, but it still kind of all fades into the background
Right.
to a certain degree, and it just lets me have some of that good downtime. So those are some things that I like to do. I love music. I can spend hours doing that. I am an author,
Hmm.
and I've got 3 or 4 different books that I'm writing on right now. Some I may never finish, some I do actually plan to finish, but part of it is I just like to write, and so it has that, again, that opportunity for me to get some downtime sometimes, but it depends on what I'm
Hmm.
writing. Sometimes that writing can require me to really be engaged in thinking, and
Hmm.
so that's not relaxing to
Hmm.
the same level. So, but when I'm journaling, that is
Hmm.
definitely, but other writing might not be. I think something also to think about is the actual practice of being conscious about resting.
Hmm.
I think again, tied to what we were saying earlier, this notion of laziness, or you're not doing enough if you're sitting around. So for
Hmm.
some people, I think there's a guilt in sitting still or resting.
Hmm.
I've seen people who just, I feel like I should be doing something.
Right.
My wife has said that before when she's been off,
Hmm.
and she said, she's been sitting there, she's like, I feel like I should be doing something. And my
Hmm.
question is, why?
Right.
Why do you
Right.
feel like you should be doing something?
Right.
What's wrong with you just relaxing for a minute? That's
Right.
actually cool.
Well, and that's doing something. So that's how you flip
Mm-hmm.
that. You say, well, the doing
Right.
something is
Right.
you're taking time for you and allowing
Mm-hmm.
yourself to rest and relax so that when the next day comes to be busy and doing busy work, you're going to be more energized in order to be able to do it and get it done as well.
You're
So I
right.
think
You're
flipping
right.
it
You're
in
not
that
doing
way,
nothing. You're not
right,
doing nothing. You are doing something.
you
You're
are
doing
doing
something.
something.
Yeah, you're recharging your batteries. That is something, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, it's something that we learned, but I think it definitely has helped, for my health and wellness to be able to figure that piece of it out. And yeah, and there's
Mm-hmm.
still times where it's hard and difficult for me to just quote sit around, but I can either read. I'm one of those folks, Rich. I don't mind like washing dishes or folding clothes and stuff like that because to me, I do
Mm-hmm.
consider that relaxing. And I think you mentioned it
Right.
is that I don't have to think much about what I'm doing, but I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives me my time and space that I need. So I'm one that sometimes I need my alone time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I just need my
Yeah.
me time, and I'm cool with it. You know what I'm saying
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's for me,
So,
and I think that's for me is a lot of that is my walking time.
mm,
And so, I try and do it as much of the year round as possible. Obviously, when it gets cold, I move inside. And so I'm on the treadmill as opposed to being out on the road, but out on the street. Well, actually out in the park. But the same thing can happen. I can still, in either place, I can pretty much shut my mind down, other than, the parts that need to be paying attention to my surroundings and all of that. But I'm free to think, I'm free to not think. So my brain will wander,
mhm.
ideas can pop in and out. Sometimes something pops in and I'm like, whoa, I need to actually take a note about this before I forget it, because it's going to keep moving. But
Right.
stuff is just going by and doing what it's doing. A lot of that for me is during that walking
Yep.
time, and so I try and do it as often as I can. So speaking of that, I'm gonna probably have to go to the gym today because this temperature, we've stretched it out as far as we can into November.
Right.
These pleasant days, but they're fading fast, brother. And now with daylight savings time, we just
Yeah.
flip that switch. So now, it's getting dark at 5 o'clock, and as soon as the sun is gone, the little bit of warmth we had holding on for the
Right.
day lets go.
Right.
So I'm been moving it. So if I can get out there now, middle of the afternoon, then it's still decent. I can put on some clothes and still be all right. But as soon as
Yep.
that sun goes, now you need gloves, you need hat and scarf.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's becoming November for real here
Right.
in Chicago land. It's we're dealing with that. One of the things that I remember seeing us as we were kind of putting this together was this notion of using
Mhm.
downtime to reconnect with purpose and
Mhm.
creativity. What
Mhm.
do you do that's creative in terms of downtime?
Man, bro, I'd like to, for me, and you've heard me say it, heard me on the podcast talk about it, but it's really, getting back into my martial arts, my Tai Chi, my Kung
Mm-hmm.
Fu. That for me is actually very relaxing and truly takes my mind away from the activities and stressors that are going on throughout the day, man. I like to also go for walks. I do like that as well. I put my headphones on, I got my music that I'm listening to, and I'll just go for walks. I love nature. I love being out and just feeling the elements as well. I don't like it when it's too cold and I don't like it when it's too hot either, but that nice balance out there can really be relaxing and it lets me know that at those moments I can let my mind just kind of wander and like you said I may have to
catch a moment where I'm like, ooh, that's a great idea. Let me write that down or get that down real quick before I let that go. And then in the mornings, man, I take a moment for meditation and prayer. I mean, I think that helps to get me started, for the day as well. And I think that's, very relaxing to be able to have that and have that moment, even though it may be about 5 minutes. But hey, that 5 minutes can really do a lot to recharge and clear things up for
Hmm.
how the rest of the day could go as well.
Yeah, my current practice is to do that very thing, and that's 5 minutes when I first wake up before I get out of the bed. When I first wake up, first 5 minutes while I'm still in the bed, I focus on one thought, one memory, whatever that makes me happy,
Yep.
so I start the day with a happy thought, a happy idea, a happy
Mhm.
memory, something like that. So that's interesting that you said that. But yeah, that's my current practice.
I love it. And as our listeners are hopefully figuring this out too, is that, you got to find your way to define what that looks like for you, as
Hmm.
well. And it can't be, or, it shouldn't be, well, this is what so and so is doing, so I'm gonna do that. Well, that may not work for you, so you have to find what is it that you find peace, you find relaxing, and you find that
Hmm.
afterwards you really do feel that sense of energy, come up from that
Yeah.
as well too. So that's
Hmm.
important.
Yeah, I think about because I've done meditation, breathing practice, done all kinds of different things. The notion around so much of that is to get your mind into a different state,
Hmm.
whereas you're not in that traditional conscious state, so that your mind is free to kind of do its intuitive things.
Hmm.
And so this notion of the things that you know intuitively or innately without you having to consciously focus on it. And so the basic idea behind so much of that, I think, it all comes down to this idea of shutting down parts of our conscious brain to let the unconscious
Hmm.
parts get a little more of those resources, do a little more of
Hmm.
these things that they do in the background. And so what that ultimately does is it means that downtime can help create or bring more clarity. It's where clarity can show up. It's because we're slowing things down.
Right.
And you're the doctor, you know what parts of the brain, but the parts of the brain that are actively working, when we're awake and doing and living and all of that, we're
Right.
shutting them down, even if it's just for a moment, or like you
Right.
said, for 5 minutes or for 30 seconds as part of
Right.
some sort of breathing practice. Or,
Right.
people practice mindfulness where, okay, sit there and close your eyes and breathe deeply and let's and now blah
Right.
blah blah blah. All of these
Right.
different things are ways to let's shut down some of our normal brain processes and conserve or shift resources for a few minutes
Right.
in ways, and that those things impact not just our waking state, but they impact our physical being,
Right.
our overall health, if we practice and do these things on the regular. By building in downtime on the regular, you're making yourself better, you're making yourself stronger,
Hmm.
you're making yourself healthier, you
Hmm.
know, by
Exactly.
making it part of the normal package, making it part of the routine.
Exactly,
So,
Rich. Exactly, brother. And I think as we probably getting ready to wrap this session up, what
hmm,
surprised you most about rest as you've gotten older? We've given some examples and things like that, but
um,
what would you kind of bring that down to?
I think the easiest way for me to see the benefits of rest is because of my normal exercise regimen.
Hmm.
My normal exercise regimen requires me to focus on recovery because I weight train too. I do,
Hmm.
every week I go a push day, a pull day, and a cardio day. So
Hmm.
after each of those days, I need to recover. So
Hmm.
I go every other day to the gym, but like I told you, I walk every day. So
Mhm.
recovery is very important because otherwise you feel it. You
Mhm.
feel it in soreness. You feel it in less ability, right? You
Mhm.
feel you've got extended fatigue, right? You
Mhm.
don't have as much strength and until you fully recover. And
Mhm.
so a lot of what I'm doing is as I'm training is training to recover effectively.
Mhm.
And one of the most important pieces of recovery is sleep,
Exactly.
not just for rebuilding physical components, not just for muscle growth, not just to make sure your joints are good and all of that, but for your brain. Your
Right.
brain, especially as we get older, and I was talking about the walking backwards the other day in the
Mhm.
last episode and things like that, because these things we do to challenge our brain, when we rest, that's when our brain grows, right?
Mhm.
When you sleep is when you learn
Mhm.
something new, the best thing you can do is go to bed,
Mhm.
because when you go to sleep, the things that you learned new, that's when your brain builds new networks, it builds
Right.
new neurons. It says,
Right.
okay, we've got to master this new thing that we've learned, and so now we need to build another circuit.
Mhm.
And essentially is what your brain does, is my understanding.
Right.
When you sleep, when you're getting the good sleep, when you're
Right.
getting enough sleep and you're getting the restorative sleep, right? You got the
Right.
different parts of sleep, right? You got your deep sleep, your light sleep, your REM sleep, and in each of those parts of sleep, your body does different things
Mhm.
related to your health. So you got to
Right.
get all of the sleep to get all of the sleep things.
Right.
So that's kind of a long-winded way around answering your question, but ultimately, I say that's where and how, as you know, I've been focusing more on the physical health in the last several years and uh, recovery and the benefits
Mhm.
of sleep to recovery
Right.
is the short answer to your question.
No, and I think that, what hopefully we've learned and hopefully we've gotten some information on through this episode is that, rest is important. We have to be intentional about it. It is not a weakness for us. It actually can bring about wisdom. As Rich just mentioned about how when we rest, our brain can develop these new connections that helps us be better and be more effective in our lives. So I think we've both learned that slowing down, relaxing, resting lets us show up as better men, as better fathers, as better husbands, and as better friends. So, on behalf of Rich and myself, we want to thank you. GK is still out there with us. I know he wants to thank you as well for joining us for this, The Art of Downtime, and we hope our brother's getting his downtime as well. So until next time, take a breath. Make sure you take care of you. Appreciate you. Remember,
Yeah,
leave us a comment, leave us a like, and share it if you think it'll help somebody else. Appreciate you.
peace, y'all.